So, very interesting guest today because I'm a huge radio fan, as anyone that listens knows. And as an Opie and Anthony fan, I was kind of groomed to hate this guy, even though I didn't really know a lot about him. I didn't know a lot about you, Chauncey Hayden, but I was groomed to hate you. And then
Right.
I actually saw an interview you did, I think somewhat recently. I was just scrolling around YouTube. And I was like, oh, this guy's just a gossipy little Gertie like myself. He just likes to shit on radio, you know? Did you feel like you got that a lot?
Yeah. Well, both Opie and Anthony and Howard Stern back in the day, that's what they would create characters.
Right.
It was like the WWE. So it didn't matter what kind of person you were or what your real personality was like. They would develop characters. And if you wanted to be on the radio, either you played ball or you didn't. So I took on the villain role with Opie and Anthony and later on with Howard Stern because I found it worked for me better than trying to, shove my nose up everybody's butt trying to get on the air. I enjoyed the hate, if that makes any sense. Like I liked it.
You were, I mean, from what I know of you, you seemed like a great shit stirrer. Was that
Yeah.
kind of your goal? Like, what did you want to do when you got into journalism? Were you always wanted to cover radio, or what was the end game when you first started out?
Oh, it wasn't radio at all. When I first started, I wanted to just be, well, when I was a little kid, I used to steal my dad's Playboys under his mattress.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you read Playboy growing up. It
I'm
had
blind,
the,
Chauncey. It wouldn't do me a lot of good.
but were you always blind?
Legally blind, yeah.
Oh, so you didn't get a chance. Well, they didn't make a Braille Playboy.
No, I should start that though. I'll invest in that company.
Well, no. They had these interviews, these Q&As with these tremendous celebrities, and I was fascinated. Even like at 9 years old and 10 years old, I would read these Q&A interviews with like John Wayne and all these tremendous stars, and I loved it. I loved reading them. So when I got older, I went to school for journalism, and I wanted to do the same thing. So I started a magazine, and 6 pages of the magazine were the same format as Playboy's interviews. It'd be like a 30 or 40 question Q&A. And I just loved it. I loved meeting all these people that was so cool or controversial and getting a chance to interview them. And one day I interviewed Sam Kinison, the comedian. I don't know if you remember him or not.
Yep.
And Sam and I got into a huge brawl. We got into a fight backstage at Rascals Comedy Club in New Jersey, and it ended up in all the newspapers. And Howard Stern called me up, and he said, "Hey, you're the dude that got into a fight with Sam." He goes, "What happened? Come on here with us. Come on here." So I went on the air, and Howard started busting my balls, saying, "Come on, you love this. This is great.
Right.
Nobody knows who you are, and now everybody's saying, who's Chauncey Hayden? This is awesome for you." And from that point on, Howard would always have me on because I learned that by talking about Howard at one point during my interviews, he would discuss it and discuss me and my magazine on a show. So it became a thing. I became a regular doing that. And because the show had 26 million people, or whatever it was at the time, other shows like Opie and Anthony and so many others all over the country started wanting me to go on their shows too. They wanted to have a Chauncey on their show. And I just played along with it. I played along with, like you said at the beginning of your question, being kind of a shit stirrer, looking for an angle, something that just I know would get into somebody's skin. And it made for great radio. It really did.
Sure. And I mean, that's what it's funny because that's probably why Howard took a liking to you, because that's what he was great at. And somewhere along the way, it seems like he kind of, I don't know if he forgot that or abandoned it or whatever. When did you notice the shift where Howard went from kind of the shit stir that loved that sort of radio to what he is now, where it's this almost PC, I guess, Hollywood Howard?
Yeah, it's changed. Well, I got, full disclosure, I really don't listen to the show. A lot of people don't. When I was on the show, you could ask the mailman, the guy behind the deli counter, the local cop. everybody could tell you what was on the show that morning. Every single person listened to it. Now you couldn't find anybody to tell you what Howard talked about today. You just wouldn't. Nobody listens. Nobody. So when I left in 2005, I didn't leave. I was killed off, and that seems to have worked out great for me because it was when Howard jumped the shark. It was right at that time. You know, I think he had another year or two in him where he was still kind of like Howard, but the pieces were all, the wheel was in motion. He was not going to be the guy he was on terrestrial radio. So I got out of it before he became who he is today. And I'm honored to be blackballed from the show where my name can't be mentioned. I find that as a badge of honor because there aren't that many of us.
I mean, well, I don't know about that. The list is growing. It gets pretty big.
It is growing. It actually is growing. You're right. You're right. But when you consider 26 million viewers, I think the list is 15 or something now, something like that. We could probably try and guess and go over it.
Sure.
There is a list somewhere, an actual list that was circulating on the internet.
I remember that. Didn't Stuttering John or someone put it out there?
Yeah, Stuttering John put it in his book. There's a real list of who can't be mentioned. And I'm glad to be on it. I really am. I'd rather do that than just have been like a little mosquito gnat trying to get airtime during the shit years. You know what I mean?
Is there a little bitterness that goes with that though, where you resent Howard now, or is it like I know you say you're glad you got out, but on some level, I'm sure you must resent that because for a lot of these guys, it happened virtually for no reason. It seems.
Well, I was on the air for about 20 years. When it happened to me, there was resentment. It's almost like a divorce because the show becomes your personality, it becomes your character, and the lines become blurred where that's how the whole world knows you. And in an instant, that carpet swept out from under you, and you don't even know who you are anymore because the world knows you as this person who Howard just killed. So it's almost like you are dead. Like you don't have a personality anymore. You're just vaporized. So I would say it took about 2 to 3 years before I started not to give a shit anymore, where I just said, you know what? I'm glad it's over. Like, I'm glad I'm out of that cult. It was a cult. It really is like a cult. And I was glad to be away from it. But it did, to your point, it took 3 years before the bitter feelings kind of faded.
But was it always that way with Howard, where if you crossed the line, you'd be fucking out? Because I think a lot of people point to Marcy Turk as, you know, the day the Stern show started to go downhill. A lot of other people say when Artie attempted suicide, that's when a lot of the fans started to turn on Howard. Was there a day that it turned, or when you were kind of in the heyday, like when you were going for Stuttering John's job and in that era of Stern, could you kind of see that was in him?
No, I did, but nobody else did. And I started to post things on the chat boards saying, you know, this guy is not the guy you think he is. And one of the big things that got me banned, the biggest thing, was Neil Cavuto from Fox News had me come on for an hour once and talk about Sirius satellite radio and what I thought the future of satellite was going to be. This was like when Howard first got on the air there. Right. And I went off and I said on Neil Cavuto, I said, Howard is not the guy you think he is. You know, we have this big fist hanging, like this righteous fist, like it's going to be a revolution and it's going to be new kind of radio. I said, it's not going to be. I said, it's going to be commercials. Howard's going to edit the crap out of it. He's going to change his image, and it's not going to be the guy that you knew on terrestrial. That guy would be more fun than the guy you're going to get on Sirius. And everybody said, "What? You're a traitor. He's a traitor. What a douchebag. We're so glad he's not on the air anymore." And then the next day, Howard was so angry, he went on the show for an hour just to tell Neil Cavuto what a dick I am. you know? But it all came to be. It came to fruition. Howard became exactly the guy that I said he was going to be in 2007.
Oh, completely. Now, here's what I'll say, almost in Howard's defense, is that
Yeah.
if someone did that to me, if someone just went on national television and shit on me and said my show's going to be shit, I would probably hate that guy also. Like if I were Howard, I can
Oh,
understand
yeah.
him hating you. My issue is more like Howard back in the day would have had you on for 4 hours to argue that. Whereas now, if someone does that, if Stuttering John writes a book or Artie goes on a
Right.
podcast or whatever, it's like it never happened. It just disappears in Howard's
He
world.
doesn't want controversy. He doesn't want controversy, and he doesn't want shit stories. He got rid of all those people on the show were eliminated. And I honestly believe I was the first banned, like seriously banned person on the show. 2005, I was sitting in my office, and I got a phone call from the Securities Exchange Commission asking me if I would come in and be interviewed for an investigation into Sirius Satellite Radio and Howard Stern and insider trading. And I initially thought it was Sal, the stockbroker, screwing around.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
hung up the phone. Phone calls back, and I pick it up, and he goes, "No, this is real. I'm from the Securities Exchange Commission. We seriously need you to come in." I hung up again. So I next day I got a fax. I'm sorry, I got a FedEx package with a subpoena in it from the SEC saying I had to come in and testify before a trade committee. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I don't own stock in Sirius. I don't know Howard Stern personally.
Right.
This is ridiculous. So I sent it over to Gary Del Bonte, Stern's producer. He laughed and said, someone's pulling a prank on you. No, I called Dominic Barber, one of the guys that was a
Yeah, the lawyer, right?
Yeah. He said he didn't call me back. Will and one of the other guys on the show laughed and said it's got to be a joke. So I didn't want to mess with it. So I sent it to the editor of the New York Post. I knew the guy, and I said, just tell me if this is real. Is this a prank, or do they really send you subpoenas by a FedEx package? He said, fax it over to me. I'll take a look. So I did. I didn't hear back from him. It was a Friday, and that was the last day of Howard's show before he went on vacation. So Saturday morning comes, I go to Dunkin' Donuts, and there's the New York Post with my subpoena and Howard's face on the cover, on the cover. and like Chauncey Hayden is going to put Howard Stern in prison.
Right. That's a nice friend, by the way. Hey, would you mind checking this out for me? It's on the cover of the Post the next day.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the media. That's how it works.
Sure.
And he knew he had a big story, and he just said, "Fuck this. Fuck Chauncey. This is a great story."
Yeah.
And can you imagine Howard being in the Caribbean, and he's on the beach getting a tan, and so gets that phone call? Hey, you might want to look at the New York Post.
Yeah.
You're on the cover. Chauncey got a subpoena, and he's putting you in prison.
See, again, in Howard's defense, I can see being like, fuck Chauncey in that moment. But what I don't understand is, was there a conversation between you two, or between you and whoever, Howard's handlers or whatever, where you got to kind of say your piece, or was it just, now you're dead?
Nobody. And that was where the bitter part came in, because I didn't feel like I ever betrayed him. It wasn't like I was out there trying to hurt him. I didn't want any part of it. And I gave him an opportunity, and I gave Gary an opportunity to handle it. I went to them first, and they blew it off.
Right.
So it was my life, not their life. They're not the ones that they're going to come for in handcuffs if I don't show up for a subpoena. It was me, and they thought it was a big joke. So in that regard, I love you, Howard, but I don't love you that much to go to jail for you.
Sure.
I'm not that much of a pal. So he had the chance to do something. He didn't. Gary didn't. His lawyers didn't. His agent didn't. So Howard got screwed over by it. He was on vacation that week, so my attorney said, look, do one interview with Fox News. Tell them that you didn't do anything wrong. Tell them it's a witch hunt. Howard didn't do anything wrong, that you have no association, and pour water on it. And I did. I went on Neil Cavuto, and I said, nope, this is ridiculous. I don't even own stock in Sirius. I have nothing to do with this. Then let me backtrack a minute. The reason why all this happened, I had a show on ABC News with a reporter named Gigi Stone, where we would talk about celebrity news and gossip. Mm-hmm. And during my segment, she said to me, her last question was, Howard, what's he going to do when his contract runs out with terrestrial radio? And I said, he's not going to XM because Opie and Anthony are on there, and he's not going to go on XM because of that. I said, the only real option he has is Sirius. So I would bet the farm that's where he's going to go. He's going to go to Sirius. And about 3 months later, I'm in the studio with Howard on the couch, and he stops the show to announce he's going to Sirius.
Right.
So the SEC put 2 and 2 together, said, this guy, 3 months ago, announced this was going to happen, and now he's next to Howard when Howard announces to the world it's going to happen. This is typical insider trading.
Sure.
He sent Chauncey on ABC to boost the stock, to say this is going to happen. How many shares did Howard buy before he made the announcement? It's illegal. You can't do it.
Right.
But they had to prove it. And it wasn't true because I didn't have any shares. I would have bought shares if that was the case.
Yeah.
So I just guessed. It was a lucky guess. So that's how it all began. And that's when I initially got banned. And then the bitterness started, and the back and forth, and the hate, and the nastiness.
Were there things on air, like while you were there, while you were part of the show, where you knew this will get me banned? Or did that element not exist? Because now I think you kind of get the vibe people walk on eggshells on that show. Mehmet,
oh my God,
or whoever is on there, they know not to step over a certain line. Was it like that then at all? Because it did not feel like it.
That's what made the show so great. There was nothing you could do to get banned. I brought a dead girl's ashes on the show, and Howard opened the box and took the bones out and held them up for the camera. We got sued for $10 million each. There was nothing you could do to get banned. That's what made the show amazing. In fact, the more outrageous, the more controversial, the better it was. Howard would give you a high five at the end of the show.
Of course.
There was nothing too over the top.
Well, you know what kind of amazes me about that is, and believe me, I don't think Howard Stern should be canceled, or no one should dig up old shit and try to apply it to today's standards. But it does kind of amaze me where people have gotten in trouble for a lot less than the things that Howard Stern has done. And he's somehow able to go on The View and claim that he's never used the N-word, which is a blatant lie. He claims the Howard Stern that existed from, the mid 80s to 2005. He pretends that guy doesn't exist, and somehow he gets away with that.
We did the Harlem Ho beauty pageant. We had prostitutes, black prostitutes from Harlem, come on the show with pus sores coming off their body, dripping down their skin with their pimp. And if that's not black exploitation, what is?
Right.
Going back again, we had my girlfriend at the time, Debbie, who died, holding up ashes on it. We did so many things that, could you imagine if A-list star, Hollywood actor or politician did today, back then, they'd be canceled. They'd be gone.
It couldn't happen. It couldn't happen. There's no way.
Eliminated. You'd never hear from them again. But the media, I don't know why. They let it go. It's okay that Howard did it. Howard did it, so it's okay.
Do you think it's, I guess that's why I asked that, is do you think he has such connection with the right people? Or is it just that a lot of people grew up listening to Howard Stern and are like, well, I don't want to, I like that show, so I don't want to get him in trouble.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that everyone listened to the show and everyone laughed at what he was doing. So it would be very hypocritical to say, well, Howard did this, so let's cancel him, when we were listening and laughing at the same time. And I think that's where the gray area is. He wasn't doing it behind a locked door. He wasn't doing it off the air. He was doing it on the air, and there were advertisers advertising on it.
Right.
There was a radio station and a corporation making billions on it. And there were millions upon millions of Americans listening to it. So everyone has blood on their hands. So I think that's the problem.
Because the picture we're kind of painting, if you were just listening to this and had no idea who Howard Stern was, we'd kind of be painting the picture of a monster and a horrible place to work. Yet when you look at that staff, from Fred, Robin, and Gary, all the way down to, like Will and Jason, a lot of these guys have been there for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Why do they have such loyalty to Howard if this is the way he kind of treats people? Or does he know to keep certain people kind of in the inner circle if they know a lot.
It's a good gig. I mean,
Right.
it's not working for the Howard Stern show is not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
And in fact, I would say now it's better than ever because you don't carry that stigma that you had before, where it might be embarrassing going to your daughter or child's parent-teachers meeting after Howard was throwing baloney on,
Yeah.
strippers' asses. Now it's not that stigma anymore. So what does Will and those guys and Jason and Gary and Sal, what do they really have to do? There's
Right.
not that much going on. So they go there, they get a paycheck, and they come home, and it's an easy gig, and they're working for Howard.
So you think it's
Why
kind of just
leave?
lack of ambition? Because I've always wondered, especially with like, I mean, Robin, I don't particularly find her crazy talented, but I think there are things she could have done in the business, at least gotten an opportunity. And everyone talks about, I'm not from the Stern generation where Fred was really in his heyday. So I don't
Yeah.
know the genius that a lot of people talk about. But when you hear people talk about Fred Norris, they talk about this comedic genius. And it makes me wonder, why did he just never want, did he have no ambition and not want to
No.
be more than the sound guy?
It's not their comedic genius. It's Howard's comedic genius.
Right.
There was chemistry. He found chemistry with those people. Whatever reason, when Howard sat down behind the mic with Robin behind the glass and Fred and Jackie there, Howard felt at ease. He felt a chemistry that only he can explain. It was there,
Right.
Was Ringo the most talented drummer?
No, but it worked.
But it worked.
Yeah.
So that's the way it went, and that's probably why they haven't gone anywhere. Robin has a great radio voice, but she's too typecast. She's Robin Quivers of the Howard Stern Show, and she'll always be. And by the way, she did try to do other things, and it didn't work. She tried to do a talk show. She had a deal, I believe, with ABC, and it failed and never made it on the air. They all tried. Fred was trying to do his music, and he had his band, and was trying to, to do other things. But the bread and butter was always Howard Stern.
Yeah.
And so why walk away from a gig that's paying your mortgage,
Right. Who there, or where did it start, I guess is what I'm wondering. Because I know you said you kind of called it first, but was it the Jimmy Kimmel factor? Like, what led to him wanting to be around these celebrities so badly? I know a lot of people say Marcy Turk as well. I don't know if you have any insight into that.
No, he always did. This was a dream of Howard from day one. Howard never really wanted to be the guy that has the freaks and the whack pack on the show. Right. He didn't want that, but he didn't think he had a choice. It was a guy who was like 6'4", 6'5", whatever he is, maybe even taller. Yeah. And he wasn't what you would call eye candy. It's a funny looking
gawky,
guy.
awkward guy. Yeah.
Gawky, awkward. He was never going to be a part of Hollywood. He was never going to be that accepted guy. What would he do? He didn't have a face for TV. So he found his niche was to mock himself and to mock others, and people related to it and they laughed. But that's not what he wanted. He wanted to be George Clooney's best friend. He really did. That's what he wanted. Yeah. And when he got so rich, when he made so much money at Sirius, where Hollywood, the entertainment elite had no choice but to embrace him because money means power, and nobody was making more than Howard Stern. He became the most powerful guy in the entertainment business. That will win you friends. It will win you the right kind of friends. So he bought his way into the club, but he always wanted it. He just couldn't have it.
Was there ever an appreciation from him of what people were giving him on radio? Because so Howard Stern, his greatest talent, in my opinion, is being able to find any character. Anyone could have walked into that studio and Howard could have found what was most entertaining about them and draw that out of them. And that's an unbelievable talent that very few people in radio history have had the way Howard has. But it also seemed like he had no appreciation for the fact that while he is making you into a star, you are kind of you're putting your personal life out there. There is a sacrifice you're making. Was he ever appreciative of that?
Right. It was the first reality show.
Yeah.
The Howard Stern show was the first reality show. It really was.
Completely.
You said something that I don't totally agree with. I have to agree. He couldn't take anyone and make them a star. He really couldn't. He could, but if you had, he'd have to see it in you. He'd have to see something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that anyone could come in there and he could find something in them. But if you had it, if there was something in there, he would
find it. Right. That's a better way to say it.
Yeah. But it was a reality show. And I remember one time, I was in a pub in Jersey, and this girl came up to me and she said, I hear you on Howard Stern all the time. I got that all the time. And she said, but can I ask you a question? Why do you let him humiliate you? Like why do you go on the air and say the things you do and let him say say the things he says to you in front of so many people? Isn't it embarrassing? Mm-hmm. And to this day, I remember her asking me that, and it made me think a lot. And the answer is, you're kind of signing your name in blood,
or you have an understanding of what you're doing. That's what you're signing up for. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have to think of what I got for doing that. What did he get and what did I get? I know what he got, and I do know what I got. My magazine was a newsprint shit penny saver. That's what it was. When you go to the supermarket and you see little classified magazines?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Right.
And I started putting celebrities on the cover and trying to sell ads to bars and restaurants. I think we were 16 pages when I started on the Howard Stern show. Mm-hmm. In the mid 2000s, we were 130 pages, billing over $2 million a year.
Oh, wow.
And that was all because of Howard Stern. Every single person in America.
So I guess you could say that's the appreciation. Like he doesn't have to thank you, but you kind of get that out of it. Does that make sense?
We both got something from
it.
Right, exactly. We both he got his entertainment, and I got what I needed from it. Every time he mentioned stepping, an ad on the Howard Stern show in its heyday was something like $1 million for a minute.
Right.
For a national ad spot. I was getting in my magazine, Stepping Out said 20 times a morning.
Yeah, right.
How do you quantify that?
Well, you've heard comedians talk about it. It was the greatest place ever. Like you could do 4,000 radio shows in Des Moines, Iowa to try and promote a gig, or you could do Howard Stern once and everyone in the fucking country knows about it.
Exactly. I'd be a fool not to do it. I was honored to do it. I was so happy to do it. And there was nothing that could be too outrageous. I remember one time there was a penis episode where I literally broke my penis. It's called Peyronie's disease.
Okay.
Same thing happened to Dennis Rodman, actually. And it's when your penis breaks, when you have an erection, and it breaks in half. And it's a terrible thing to have happen.
I can imagine.
Howard was so fascinated by this. He couldn't believe it. He thought it was bullshitting. So he asked me to come in and have Robin, who's a registered nurse in real life, have Robin examine it. So I actually went on the show. I'm a journalist, whipped my dick out and let Robin play around with it for about a minute and describing to Howard what it looked like and if it indeed had symptoms of Peyronie's disease. Yeah. Who does that? I have a mom and dad at home, my brothers,
right.
and they're hearing, man, your brother Chauncey whipped his dick out on Stern today and Robin was playing with his balls. That's rough, but that's the kind of stuff I did, with no regrets.
I get... I've always been curious about this because I listen to like Artie Lange over the years, and believe me, some of this is influenced by drugs, I'm sure, on some level. But he's always had this weird kind of conflict where he'll go on a podcast and trash Howard, and then a few weeks later he'll kind of talk about how it was the greatest experience of his life, and he loved him, and it was a father to him.
Yeah.
Is there an element of that with everyone, I wonder? Because I know, like I said, Artie's got his issues, but is there an element of that like that you've experienced where you kind of love Howard for everything he did for you, but you also hate the way it ended and you hate the way that maybe you were treated afterwards?
That's a great question, and it's well put. And the answer is yes. Yeah, absolutely. There are days I hate that motherfucker. I hate him, and I can't talk. I can't do enough bald shows about him. The podcast I talk about baldness, and they come on talk about Howard. He's bald.
Yeah.
I can't not stop taking digs at him when the opportunity presents. But at the same time, I love him. Like if I met Howard Stern in an elevator today and we were both in there alone, I would say thank you. I would say, Howard, that was a great 20 years. Thank you so much. Thank you. I don't regret anything he did. I don't regret anything I did. I hate him and I love him. That's true.
I imagine it's got to be tough because I've heard a lot of guys, whether it's Jackie or Artie or Stuttering John or whoever, where they kind of have that where they'll trash him sometimes and they'll appreciate him sometimes, and you kind of get labeled as either an unappreciative traitor or a ball washer who's afraid to attack Stern. But I imagine it's got to be tough to work out in your mind.
Well, here's the problem with a lot of guys, a lot of former Stern guys that I don't personally have. A lot of these guys are still in the business. A lot of the guys from the Stern TV are still in the business. They can't, if they go out there and trash Howard Stern, they're not gonna get jobs. They're not gonna work. Howard's powerful, and a lot of people are loyal to Howard Stern. And if you start trashing him, you're going to have a very difficult time working in the radio, entertainment, TV industry. It's not going to be there. Well, I personally don't give a shit.
It's funny. The reason I kind of became an O&A fan when I was a kid versus Stern is because of hearing the stories about how Opie and Anthony were kind of the one show that went up against Howard that Howard didn't absolutely destroy. Everyone else that went up against Howard, it was a brutal beating when Howard got a hold of him.
Well, he was definitely intimidated by Opie and Anthony because they weren't playing by the rules. They didn't show the respect or fear that they should have, that he felt they should have, and they had the numbers to back it up. That was the scary part. A lot of guys had big mouths and, DeBella in Philadelphia, who are the guys, Mark and Brian out in California. Right. They had big mouths and a trash Stern, but they didn't have the ratings to scare Stern. Opie and Anthony actually were digging into his bottom line.
Right.
Business.
And well, the thing, so that's what fascinated me is finding out, because O&A were the only ones that ever really talked about this, but finding out some of the stuff that went on behind the scenes, where when they both worked for CBS, when O&A were on in afternoons on NEW, and Howard was obviously on in the mornings, Howard worked behind the scenes to try and silence them, which would be, I was only, 9 years old at the time, but would have been my first inkling that, okay, this is not the guy that he's pretending to be. He's not Mr. Free Speech, Mr. Everyone should have a voice and be able to say what they want. He's not that at all.
Not at all. No, he's not. That's what a lot of listeners later on found out, that Howard was not the guy that you were hearing every morning. He tapped into a formula. He knew what listeners wanted to hear. He knew how to market himself to the public. To present himself a certain way that people embraced. But no way is that Howard. Howard was a millionaire going back to the NBC days. Howard couldn't relate to any listener. Howard was a very wealthy, rich, powerful man for a good portion of the last 30, 40 years. So there was none of that, but he knew how to play it. What Opie and Anthony did, they called him out on it, and no one did that before. And they really did call him, because they did have the goods. They were getting other guests. They were getting celebrities on their show that would tell them inside stuff about Stern. They had the same boss at certain points where they were sharing, the same guy signing their check, Mel, would tell Opie and Anthony, you can't say this anymore. You can't talk about Howard's kids anymore. You can't do this. And now imagine telling Howard Stern that. Imagine telling Howard Stern that you can't say this about Chauncey anymore. You can't mention this. You can't mention this about his bald head anymore. He doesn't like it. But
and it's kind of amazing that, I mean, he's a brilliant guy, but doesn't acknowledge that hypocrisy, you know?
No, he doesn't, you know, it's not he doesn't acknowledge it. He
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
care.
He's aware of it.
Yeah, he's aware of it. He doesn't give a shit. In fact, he embraces it. He knows he's a hypocrite. He lives in a giant fortress of a mansion, you know, that you couldn't get within a mile of. Howard's like a Michael Jackson of 2021. He really has become Michael Jackson. Like,
Right.
He's kind of a freak. He became a parody of himself. He really is. I think that's the best way to put it. He's a parody of himself now.
Yeah, well, actually, that kind of leads me to a guy I did want to bring up briefly. I obviously have a lot to ask you about Opie and Anthony and a couple more things about Stern. But one guy I wanted to ask you about is a guy that a lot of people say Howard has become. Like, he went after Don Imus forever.
Yeah.
And now he's kind of become, like, there are clips where you go back and listen, and all the things he's criticizing Don Imus for, you know, a younger wife, the long, silly hair, all that type of shit.
Yeah.
That's Howard now.
Yeah.
So was his rivalry with Imus out? I don't know anything about Imus. You hear all kinds of shit.
I'll tell you what it was. I'll tell you exactly what it was. How it was jealousy.
Right.
Howard wanted to be Imus. What he was mocking Imus for was his anger for what he didn't have.
Right.
You know, and it's the same thing with the celebrities. When he would call Chevy up at home and harass him, or he would pray that so and so died, or you know, whatever he did with these A-list celebrities to anger them, it was all because he hated them because of who they were, and he couldn't be them. He never stopped trying. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. He never stopped trying to be what Imus was, what these A-list celebrities were. And when he achieved it, and he did achieve it eventually at Sirius, he didn't care if the listeners thought he was a hypocrite. He climbed Mount Everest. He made it. He didn't give a crap what anybody said. He's not going to hear your voice or my voice. And if he happens to do hear it, and what is it? Big deal.
Right.
He's got a model wife. He's a trillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And people are throwing billions at him every weekend. Doesn't give a shit.
Right.
And that's why he lost his fans.
It's so funny too, because the picture I have in my head of Imus is because a lot of things that I heard Howard Stern say about him. Now, obviously, when you look back at Imus now, the big thing was probably the nappy-headed hose comment. But before that, everything you knew of Imus is because Howard said he's this racist piece of shit. Do you know anything about him? Was he that guy, or was it kind of just Howard needling him?
Was Imus racist?
Was I? Yeah, I guess is the question.
Listen, I'll tell you a great story. And this might answer your question. So I went to see the Grateful Dead at the Meadowlands one year, back in the late 90s, mid 90s. And it was when they played the Meadowlands. I think it was like 20 straight nights. And it was like a bohemian Woodstock with campsites and everybody's doing acid. And we're pulling out of the parking lot, me and my buddy, and these two girls are hitchhiking. We pull over and pick them up. So they say they live in Central Jersey. So I'm like, fuck it, we'll give you a ride. We'll give you a ride home. Mm-hmm. The one girl turns out to be Tony Imus, his daughter.
Okay.
and I'm like, wait a minute, she's telling us all about her dad. I'm like, so wait, you're the daughter of Don Imus. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God. I go, this is insane. I got a million questions for you. I go, what is your dad like? Like, what is he like for real? She goes, he's a piece of shit. He's a racist. He's a scumbag. I hate him. Wow. I can't wait for him to die. He's the worst human being you'd ever want to know. And that was from his daughter. Okay. So that's how any information I had about Don Imus came from his daughter. And that's what she said to me.
Okay. Yeah. Because, you know, that's the thing is where you've heard that story that Robin has told about Imus using the N-word and things. But then because of what Howard's kind of become, it's like, well, should I even trust that? So that's interesting that you have that totally separate experience.
Yeah, totally separate from the Stern Show. It was just a freak thing where I picked up his daughter and she was blabbing about her dad.
That's wild.
Yeah.
One more thing about Stern before I get to O&A, and that's I wonder why, and maybe you have no insight into this because it's current day Stern. But I do wonder why. I remember here, like, so Gilbert Gottfried is banned from the show, right?
And
Seemingly just because he's not their type of guy anymore.
Well, yes and no. Initially, Gilbert was trying to Gilbert used to have a free pass. He didn't have to even call. He could just show up to the studio and get money out. He'd do the news with Howard. He didn't have to call Gary. A long time went by, and Gary wasn't having him on. So it's true what you said. One time, Gilbert called Gary and said, "So what's the deal? Level with me. Why can't I get on the show anymore?"
Yeah.
And Gary said, "You're not the kind of guest we're looking for anymore. You don't fit the new format." But what got Gilbert wasn't banned at that point. What got Gilbert banned is then he went and told everybody he could tell that that's what Gary said to Gilbert. When you spill your guts about what something is said to you in private, you're banned.
Yeah.
As soon as you do that. So he went on Artie's podcast and talked about it. He talked about it on a lot of shows. And
I've heard him speak about it a little bit.
Yeah, you're never going to get back on after that.
Yeah.
Then you're banned.
But the part I'm focusing on is more the first half of that, where Gary tells him, like, you're not our kind of comic anymore. We'd prefer Chelsea Handler and Sarah Silverman for some reason.
Wasn't big enough. Yeah,
so he's not big enough. Yeah. But then I wonder, like, why are Richard and Sal still there? Because if you ever check into Stern, which I don't really, but once in a while I'll come across a clip where, Richard and Sal wear a diaper for a week and they weigh it and shit. Like, they still try to do wacky old time Stern stuff that doesn't feel natural anymore. But my question is, why not just get rid of that and become a celebrity interview show? Because
he hasn't 100% committed to being just a 1 hour interview.
Right.
He still needs, for his own comfort, his own buffer zone. He still wants to, when he feels like it, when he needs some sort of resemblance of what the Stern Show was that made it popular, he doesn't have to search for it. He doesn't have to do any hard work. He just has to hit a button and two monkeys come into the room and put on underwear and pee in their pants, kiss each other, grab each other's balls and leave.
Yeah.
So you'll get that thirst for the old Stern is there at a push of a button when he needs it.
It's so fascinating. When I hear that he re-signs with Sirius, I'm like, why? Why not just do an interview show? I don't get it.
Well, he'd be blowing up his brand completely then. And quite honestly, I don't think he has the confidence to do that. I think Howard Stern is probably one of the least secure people in all entertainment, even though
it's so weird because he's blown up his brand. It's so odd that he doesn't see it that way.
I think he hates himself, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he looks in the mirror and he hates what he sees. I do. I think he has a lot of guilt about a lot of things he did. You might have heard he went on that apology tour. There was a couple of months where he called every celebrity he ever trashed, people he felt he hurt, and he was calling them up begging for forgiveness. Can you imagine? All I can picture is a scene from Cool Hand Luke when he's digging the hole in the dark. And he goes, "I'm sorry, boss. I got my mind right, boss." I picture Howard Stern saying, "I got my mind right."
Right.
Chevy, I got my mind right, Chevy. I got my mind right.
Is that the kind of person? Was it like Chevy Chase and Ellen DeGeneres and these people we always hear about?
Yeah, Roseanne, Ellen, Chevy, Sylvester Stallone, David Lee. There's such a list of celebrities I used to rag on that are now his best friends. Rosie O'Donnell, Kathy Lee. The list is long, and he apologized to every one of them and begged them for forgiveness. That's the hero of Stern fans.
No one. If you went back to 1991 and told someone that's the guy, no one would believe you.
Imagine telling Howard in 1991 that's the guy.
Right. Yeah.
Can you imagine? It's mind-boggling. But then again, think how long ago 1991 was.
Sure.
It was a really long time ago. We're all getting old. We're all dying.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was born in 91. So yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago, literally.
Yeah, you were born in 91. I was doing the show in 88.
Yeah. Well, that's my whole thing with Howard. I guess that's a good place to spot to move on to O&A. But last thing on Howard is that's my whole thing with him is, of course, he's not the same guy. He's what, in his 60s now?
Late 60s.
Late 60s. So of course he's not the same guy he was when he was 35 or 21.
It would be creepy.
It would be insane.
Yeah,
but
if a 67-year-old guy was talking about jerking off, in the closet, who would want to hear that?
It wouldn't make any sense.
Gray pubes and the whole thing.
Especially in this, current climate we live in. But my issue is, and I think a lot of fans' issues are, it didn't happen naturally. It was one day that just ended. And he pretends it doesn't happen.
It might seem that way. It might seem it happened overnight, but it didn't. It really happened with me. It happened with me when I was banned for causing controversy, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, true.
So 10 years before that, oh my God, you got to see what Chauncey did today. Get Chauncey on the phone. It would have been that.
Yeah.
But then Howard, with me, there was no call. There was no mention. It was just erase him.
Right. So now we get to where I learned who you were, and I was like, this motherfucker, Chaunce Hayden, because of this. I assume, if I'm talking to Opie, I would assume you know to me, because this is the only dealing I know of you having with them, unless there were others. But I'm thinking of the Bam Margera sex tape thing.
Yeah.
Can you give me any insight into that? Because that seems like a weird one where everyone in the O&A world says that that tape does not exist. Well, sorry, I guess I'll backtrack for the listeners. You reported a story that I believe Ben Sparks gave to you. Is that correct?
No, Ben Sparks didn't give it to me. It was given to me by the producer, the other producer,
Rick Delgado.
Rick Delgado, yeah.
Okay, so Rick Delgado tells you that there's a sex tape with Bam Margera and Opie's wife, or Opie's soon-to-be wife. I don't know if they were married at the time.
Right.
And that got reported in Stepping Out, and Opie was fucking furious.
That's where the story is so wrong.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Let me tell you what happened.
Please.
I only speak the truth. So you won't hear Opie's crazy version.
Please, go ahead.
You're going to hear what really happened. So I did an interview with Rick Delgado for Stepping Out, and it was right when he got fired from O&A. So he was pretty bitter, and it was a great interview, but he really laid into Opie and Anthony. He talked about the infighting they're having, how they don't get along, how crazy Opie is. Mm-hmm. So I published, and that really stirred Opie up. He was really pissed.
And I'll say this in your defense. Now we're 20 years later, or whatever, 15 years later. That all seems to be very true. That's what even Anthony and Jim Norton say about Opie.
Oh yeah, everything was true.
Right.
But they couldn't come out and say that at the time. They still got to hold it together and have a radio show.
Yeah.
And that's my job, to do an interesting story. It was a great story. So at the end of the interview, off the record, he goes, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Opie's fiance slept with Bam from MTV. And I said, oh my God, I don't believe that. I said, where did you hear that? He goes, from Ben Sparks.
Okay.
So Ben Sparks did start it, but he didn't tell me, Rick told me. So I'm like, so do you have any proof? He goes, there's a BAM CD, and on the CD, there's a hidden egg, and you can see it. You can watch the sex tape on this egg on the CD.
Okay.
So I said to him, all right, I said, if you get me that CD, show it to me, and I'm going to look and see. If
a DVD, you mean? I'm assuming?
What's that?
Like a DVD, I'm assuming?
A DVD, yeah.
Okay,
DVD.
yeah.
So he goes, okay, I'm gonna talk to Ben and see if I can get it for you. So now I at the time I was a freelancer for Page Six, and with Richard Johnson for the New York Post. So I call up the New York Post, Page Six, and I'm like, you know what? Someone just told me that Bam and Opie from the Opie and Anthony show's fiance have a sex tape on Bam's DVD. And they said, we heard the same thing. And I'm guessing they heard it from Ben Sparks.
Yeah,
Ben probably called Page Six.
Yeah.
So they're like, we heard the same thing. Do you have any proof? I said, no, I was calling you to see if you knew about it, that proof. They said, we don't. I said, well, someone's sending me this DVD. I'm going to watch it, and I'll let you know what I see on it. They said, perfect. They said, well, let's compare notes when you get the DVD. Let's talk and we'll work a story around. We'll make it a big story. I said, awesome. So that's whatever. That was like a Wednesday. The next day in the New York Post in page 6, it says Chauncey Hayden says to page 6 that there's a sex tape with bands from MTV. And I never printed anything. Right. I would never do that without seeing it. So, but they're crediting the story to me. And I guess they thought they could cover their ass that way because they're saying, well, Chauncey told us.
They didn't say it, yeah.
They didn't say it. Chauncey said it.
Right.
But they have no proof of me saying it. It's not in writing. It's not in print. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just me and them talking. It's not something that they're pulling off out of a magazine. But Opie goes on, the next morning, Opie goes ballistic, saying that he's going to sue me for printing this. And I'm thinking, I never printed it. What are you talking about? How are you going to sue me for printing something I never printed?
Right.
Like how? You're going to sue me because I asked page 6 if they heard about the same story that I heard? That's defamation. Right. I know that's two people bullshitting, asking if the story's true. Right. That's what we're supposed to do, in fact, is ask if it's true, not to print it, which is exactly what I did. And Opie went on this tirade for weeks and weeks. He's suing me, and he did sue me for $10 million. And it was crazy. It got thrown out. The first lawsuit was thrown out. He went to the Supreme Court and got it put back into the courts.
Really?
And our attorney was Darnay Hoffman, who was the same attorney for, do you know who Bernard Goetz is?
Yes, yeah, the subway vigilante.
He was the vigilante, and he also he was the attorney for the Mayflower Madam, who was the big celebrity prostitute, pimp in New York that had a very high profile case. So this guy, Darnay, says, I'm going to represent you in this, no fee. I'm not going to charge anything, but we're going to get in all the papers, and I know I can win this for you. And he's like this Peter Falk kind of lawyer, but a big belly with the spaghetti stains on. And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, no, I'll get you off. So we're going to all these depositions with Opie and his fiance, and we're filming her. I actually filmed her just to bust the balls because you can film depositions. Mm-hmm. So I paid for cameras to film everything she said. And it was so wacky. And Darnay's not saying anything. He's not saying anything on my behalf. I'm like, what are you doing? I go, everything they're saying is a lie. He goes, that's all right. I want them to think I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And then just when they think they won, watch what I do. Okay. And he kept doing that for like a year. Like, when did we do the switcherino? When's the old switcherino?
Oh, it never came?
$10 million. When we throw that, the right-hand punch? And it's like, it's coming. It never came.
Oh, but, Jesus Christ.
But we won.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I won the case. But I knew I was going to win because he couldn't present anything that I printed because I never printed anything. And not only that, but I learned a lot about defamation because even if I did print it, you can still say it, even if it's a lie.
Yeah, they say it's crazy hard to prove defamation.
They have to prove a loss in wages. There's so much proof of evidence of being defamed and hurt that it's nearly impossible, especially when you're in the public eye. It's nearly impossible. That's why celebrities, a lot of times, don't even bother suing because they're not going to win. So anyway, I won the case. That night, Darnay Hoffman took a steak knife and shoved it into his heart and killed himself.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you can look it up. It's on Google. He shoved a steak knife right in his heart and killed himself.
God.
The night we won. I wanted to come over with a bottle of champagne, and he's laying in the bathroom dead.
That's what. Jesus Christ. Well, at least it's got a happy ending. That story.
He went out with a winner. Yeah, he went out winning.
That's true.
How crazy is that story? But yeah, Opie hated me. And the more he hated me, the more I enjoyed it. And then I just started writing about him.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was like, does that lead to you really digging in?
Oh yeah, it was so much fun because I knew at this point I owned them, and I knew all I had to do was call him asshole. I had a column called Asshole of the Week, And once a month, he was my asshole of the week.
Yeah.
And I would even purposely like type things that were wrong that he had that made him read it because he had to correct it. So I knew how to make him read it on the air. So you go, oh yeah, Chauncey, well this is wrong. He's saying yeah, yes. Oh my God, it was so much fun.
I can imagine because it seemed by all accounts he was one of the easiest guys to agitate and one of the biggest babies in radio. Did you like?
Yeah, he was.
Have you experienced someone like that? Because some of the stories are wild.
Well, do you remember the initial story that really got him to hate me? Where
can I guess? Because I think was it the WoW thing that he invented? WoW.
Okay. Yes. So I was hired by Penthouse magazine to do a big feature story on Opie and Anthony.
Yeah.
So I go to the studio to interview them for Penthouse. And great interview, wrap it up, turn my recorder off, and I go back to the office to write it up. The second I get to my office, the phone rings. It's Opie. And I'm like, hey, Opie, what's up? He goes, hey, man, everything's good. I just got this one problem about the interview today. I'm like, what is it? He goes, remember when you asked me and Ant about who started WoW? I said, yeah. He goes, well, Ant answered the question. And Ant said, we invented it and whatever, how we did it.
Yeah.
He said that he says that all the time. And he's always the one to answer that question. He said, would you mind doing a little editing? He said, because it's not true. Ant didn't invent WoW. I invented it. It was my thing. And I gave it to the Opie and Ant show when we were on the air, but I never get credit for the guy that came up with it. So would you change the answer to Opie answers it and says, oh yeah, I came up with WoW, I didn't really have a problem with it. I said, listen, I don't care. I really don't care. I said, I'll do it. And I changed it. Well, one day on the Stern show, he was talking about Opie and Anthony, and you're always looking for a reason to get on the air. I said, oh, what a great story this is. I gotta tell Howard. I said, Howard, I got the best Opie and Anthony story. I just interviewed them for Penthouse, and then Howard starts doing his riff about Penthouse, about the whole thing. And I tell him the story. Opie made me change the WoW question. And Opie went insane. He knows it's true. But to listen to him go on and on that I'm a dirty journalist, I'm a liar. He can prove I'm a liar. And I'm like, I said, Opie, why would I change it? Then why did I change it? Why in Penthouse does it say you invented it? Did I just decide when I got back to the office to
orchestrate this entire,
I would just orchestrate this and decide, no, I bet you Opie really invented it, and I'm going to change it. Right. Where did that even come from? And, it's funny. Last year, I did Anthony's show podcast. Mm-hmm. And we had such a good time, and we talked a lot about it. And he told me, he said, Chauncey, I knew the whole time that you weren't lying. He goes, I knew you were telling the truth. He goes, but I couldn't do anything. We still had a show together.
Yeah, it's such a wild relationship those two have, because it seemed like Opie was almost an abusive husband in a way, an abusive spouse, because everyone was so afraid to talk about him.
Yeah, he was crazy. and even the thing with my chick, when he would go, my Chauncey's, it's making my chick upset. My chick, man. Yeah. Who says my chick?
Oh, constantly.
I never heard anybody say that. My chick. My chick, man.
Yeah.
And what on YouTube, the greatest thing is when he's reading the one article I wrote about him, and Anthony starts and Norton start busting his balls. And he storms out of the studio. It's one of the funniest fights you'll ever hear.
Oh, it's great. Don't needle me. He gets all upset.
I'm having a moment here.
Yeah, it's like a comedy radio. And that's the other thing is that the amazing thing about him asking you to change I invented WoW is like, even if that's true, let's say Opie came up with it and Anthony took credit for it.
Yeah.
The entirety of the Opie and Anthony show is because of Anthony and Jimmy. Like Opie certainly had his value, but the comedic value was entirely Anthony and Jimmy. So why not let that one slide?
Jimmy and Ant show would have been very good.
Right.
If Opie stopped showing up, and it's such a petty thing. What made it funny is that it's such a petty thing.
Right.
With all the millions they made and all the success they had as a team, to have to call me up to say, change this answer to I. But if that's not telling into someone's personality, think how crazy and how sick that is.
It's a big insecurity thing. Yeah.
It's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing. And then to go on a total rant that's a lie. When he know, I mean, if he would have said, oh, I got busted, he goes, it would have been funnier if he would have said to Ant on his radio show at the time, Chauncey outed me.
Yeah.
I did do that.
I had a moment of insecurity. Yeah, you got me.
I regretted doing it. I knew I should have done. It would have been funnier. It would have been funnier.
Yeah, Opie never had that like make fun of myself mentality the
No,
way the others
couldn't do it.
guys did.
Ant could do it. Norton could do it. Stern could do it. We all could do it. Part of what made radio fun was when you could be self-deprecating. Everybody can relate to that.
Right.
But
was it known in the business how much Opie and Anthony hated each other internally? Because I feel like as a fan, that was kind of a surprise when that all came out.
Not until I started writing about it. Not until I did the Rick Delgado interview. And I think that's why all the Opie fans hated me. It would just be like the Stern show. When I first started attacking Stern in 2005, I got hate mail and threats and death threats because it's like a religion. The fan base is like a cult. So when you go against their heroes, you're in big trouble.
Oh, of course, yeah. But hey, you're the first on the forefront, my friend. You're always the first to out Stern, out Opie. You're the guy.
I love it. And it wasn't just with them. My whole career, with so many celebrity, I'm not really proud of this, but I got Jim Brewer fired from Saturday Night Live.
How'd that happen? I like Jim Brewer. Why are you doing that?
Disaster. So I did an interview with Jim Brewer. And I said to him, it was the week that Rolling Stone magazine came out with the cover of SNL, the cast on the cover. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't on it. There was a few of them didn't make it on the cover. And I said to Jim, I go, so how do you feel about not making the cover of Rolling Stone, and yet almost the entire cast is on there except Goat Boy and Joe Pesci? You're one of the most popular characters on the show, and you're not on the cover. What were you sick today? Were you sick of the day to shoot? Like, what happened? Yeah. He goes, oh my God. He goes, I'm so heartbroken over that. He goes, I'm heartbroken. He goes, I blame Lorne Michaels. Lorne Michaels fucked some of us. He fucked us. He said we should have been on the cover. He said for whatever reason he doesn't like us, and he took us off the cover, and he's a douchebag, and he's doing an interview. Yeah. And so I wrote the interview, published it, and then next day in page 6, big headline: Goat Boy, Rams. Lorne Michaels or something along those lines. And there's a whole story about everything he said. And Jim Brewer calls me up and goes, man, you fucked me. I said, how?
What did he think you were going to do?
This was your answer. We weren't sitting at a bar. I didn't come up to you at a pub and say, can we have a beer? And you just
he knew he was being interviewed. It wasn't like an off-the-record
story. This is your answer. I'm not your publicist. I'm not here to make sure you don't get in trouble.
Right.
There you go. So Lorne Michaels' secretary calls my office and asks for a copy of the interview. And so he asked for a fax of it. So we faxed it over. And the next day he got fired.
Jesus Christ. Do you ever regret any of that? Because there's some times where I'll pipe up about someone and give, my true feelings or make a joke that I think is funny or whatever. And the person gets mad. And I tend to back away, and I get criticized for that because it's me kind of being a pussy. But also in my mind, I'm like, well, I didn't want to upset the person either. It's kind of half being fake, but it's also like, I didn't want to get this react. Do you ever struggle with that, or did you full on love being a shit stir?
No, I struggled with it. In fact, I struggle with it to this day. I did over 3,000 celebrity interviews over a 30-year career. And a lot of them hurt people. A lot of them did. I even had a gossip column for the New York Daily News for a while. Mm-hmm. I hurt people. Brooke Shields, I really like her. She was such a good person, really, really a sweet person. And she did an interview with me once, and she was talking about Michael Jackson. And she said some pretty personal things. But at the same time, I was working for the Daily News. and had a gossip column with AJ Benzer. I don't know if you know AJ.
From the Stern Show, I know him. Yeah.
He actually was parodied on Family Guy, which to me is the coolest thing. But so I had this great story from Brooke Shields for my other magazine, but I also had to get items for the New York Daily News. And this is it. This is a great item. So I typed up what she said for a gossip column in the New York Daily News, and I didn't write the titles. They had a copy editor that would write the titles of the columns, and someone wrote Babbling Brook, and then my story underneath. And I felt like a piece of shit. I really did. I felt like I fucked her over, and really felt bad about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times I did. I really did, because it always was. You won, especially in that time period, in the 90s and the early 2000s. It was all about getting on the tabloid shows.
We've pulled back, but that was kind of the heyday of, you could almost say whatever
Perez
you wanted.
Hilton.
Yeah.
You had guys like Perez Hilton. You had Hard Copy, Geraldo. You had all these Gawker. You had all these hard gossipy websites, and TMZ was just starting out.
Yeah.
And everyone was trying to top the other person who could get the most outrageous story. And I had access to so many celebrities, and I really did take advantage of it. And it made me a lot of money. And I became very successful over it. But I was a piece of shit for that, more so than what I ever did to Opie or Howard Stern.
Right.
I think what I did to Hollywood people, the musicians, throwing them under the bus in the gossip columns was terrible.
I can see, because, why I would agree with you on that is because Brooke Shields, her life is not an open book the way Stern and Opie at least pretend to be, Whereas you think they're not even, why would they care about this,
No, I was a good interviewer, and I really got people to open up, but to the point where they forget to doing an interview.
Right.
You'd sit in a restaurant with somebody, with Henry Winkler or whoever it could be. It could be anybody. Brooke Shields, or Britney Spears. You're sitting in a restaurant, and I got my little tape deck cassette player playing on the table, but we're having drinks and we're having lunch, and over an hour and a half, people, if you win them over, they just start talking, which is what you want. Right. And I would really get some awesome things out of them, but then race right back to the office, pull out the greatest dirt I could find, and promote that interview in a gossip page to get attention for the article, which is, you could say that's nothing wrong with that. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get a lot of hype for a story you did. You want to sell it to the public, but at the same time, I felt like these people weren't asking for that, didn't want that. Right. And I did it to them.
Well, I certainly, as a guy who loves gossip, I certainly appreciate all of it. And I appreciate you coming on to talk Howard and O&A and old radio and all that kind of stuff. My last question for you.
Yeah.
Does Howard Stern wear a wig?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I can prove it.
How so?
Well, okay. So when I had my magazine, one of my biggest advertisers was this hair replacement center in New York City, a guy by the name of Richard Farrell. Okay. Farrell Hair Replacements. And he was advertised on the Howard Stern show. And that's how I got him to advertise with me. So I went over there one day to collect he owed us some money for the ads. And I went up to the shop on 24th Street. And he said, all right, I'll be with you in a minute. Can you just have a seat in a private cubicle? It's one of the rooms where they actually do the hair replacements. So I'm sitting there, and he's got a picture on the wall, and it's Howard. And it's Howard getting his hair replacement.
Really?
It's signed by Howard. Thanks for making me look like a human being or something like that. Signed Howard Stern. And there it is. And he comes in, and I go, that's Howard. He goes, yeah, he's a client.
How would Howard allow that, though? Why would he sign that if he wants to keep it such a secret?
I don't know why Howard. I don't think Howard knew he had it hanging up in his office. Right. I don't know, but it was there. And there was Howard, and he signed it.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Chauncey Hayden, thank you so much, man, for coming on. Is there anything you're promoting or just hanging out?
I live in Ireland now, and I'm raising my 9-year-old daughter, Poppy. And right now, I'm out of the game, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Oh, it
I'm
must be nice. I envy you, my friend.
yeah. I'm here. The leprechauns and the shamrocks and the Guinness,
Yeah.
and I'm just being a dad and watching you guys do all the work now.
Well, Chauncey Hayden, thank you so much, man. I love this. Hopefully, I think a lot of Stern and O&A fans will enjoy it as well. So thank you very much, buddy.
Hope so. All right, man. Thank you for doing this.
All right, talk to you later.
Okay.